Recording in progress.
Okay, hello everyone. We are doing a Wolfram language design review, part of our incremental language development series. And we have a variety of topics which were thought in the, when was it? The 2015 type time frame to be low hanging. So let's take a look.
We might actually start with the second section since we're waiting on Carlo to show up. We have Shadi
Okay.
here.
Image interpret. So that's the reverse. I think this is just a toy. It's kind of the reverse of what people think we should do, which is, make one of these text to image generators. It's the, can you make a sentence about what's in this image type question. Shadi,
Okay.
are you with us?
I see. I didn't remember that. Now that you say that description, that makes sense. There are captioning techniques for images. If you think that's something we want to do, I think it could be a good, either an intern project or neural network conversion project or something like that.
I think that's what look, if there's a neural net that just does something reasonable here, we could try it.
Sure.
I think it starts in the neural net repository and maybe the function repository. And if it seems to be doing very useful things, we can consider it as a system function.
Makes sense.
Okay, carousel and image carousel. So that is just like we have things like tab view and so on, carousel will be a carousel view of a bunch of images. Seems useful to me. I think it's more like a front end play than it is something else. Comments from people.
Yeah, I mean, I assume we'd have similar set of concerns with like image collage or something like that.
Well, I'm thinking this is more like, look, I mean, it's just like let's see. Misspelling, will it get it? No. Okay, so let's say we have this, and now we say tab view of that. So, this is a way of viewing them. And what I'm imagining here is that carousel is just another view type where it's on, you have a forward button and a back button, right?
How about list animate of that? And we have animated image.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that's close. It's just not quite the same thing, right? So, I mean, we've almost got exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it would be a useful thing to have to just say, make a carousel in which, you can go forward and backward, right? It's a very simple thing. I mean, this is something maybe the John Fultz and the front end team need to opine.
I kind of agree, because I think it's not just useful for images. If you have anything, it better work with any expression.
Okay. Yeah, right. No, I mean, it would just be a carousel. I don't know why image carousel is separate. I think this is a useful thing. I don't see why we wouldn't want to have it.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it on our slate. If
we have something pretty similar in the function repository.
Okay.
That I put in chat if you want to look at.
It's similar.
You can drag the bar on top, and it's
kind of nice, actually.
Yeah, I use this all the time. It's a really helpful utility.
Well, maybe we should build this in. I mean, something very much like this. I mean, look at the graphic design of it, but I like this, and this is kind of cool. I mean, there's another one that I use all the time, which is what is it called? Interactive selector. Interactive list selector, That's a slightly different thing, and maybe not so generally relevant, but this would be very useful. I mean, this is a pretty common thing one wants to do, is to examine a whole bunch of things. I mean, we could, yeah. Okay. This is, as I say, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether this is for this team or it seems useful to me. I mean,
Yeah.
this will need some graphic design and UX to really make it as spiffy as it could be.
Okay. Yeah, we'll bring that back around when we look at Wolfram function repository stuff as well.
Well, I don't know. How uninteresting is it? How hard is it to do? I mean, it's like if you want a program that can, I mean, look, every old system now comes with many different kinds of beeps. It seems,
I think the
Well-
project is really curating a whole bunch of beep
Yeah,
sounds.
that's what it is. Yes, that's what it is.
Do you want us to spend time on that?
No,
Could
you
that
should
be
spend time
okay.
on that. I mean, the only question is, where on earth does that get put? I mean, maybe, I have no idea. I mean, we can ask, somebody is probably into this, but yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, the only
Yeah.
other thing is that beep already also has a one argument form, which is a message. And I would have thought the easiest way to generalize that to be a named beep as the first argument is the name of the beep.
Yeah, I would have thought so too.
Right.
Ugh,
Well, one other thing maybe is that beep, I think, does like the beep is, at least on Mac, it's an OS beep. Like there's an operating system setting where you can set what kind of beep you want.
well, but then there are many different operating system beeps. So, we should be able
Well,
to set.
I mean, they have different options, but like on Mac, anytime an there's like a single beep sound that comes from all applications, when something beep worthy happens.
Where do I go? Where do I go to see it? Is it in notifications?
I think it's in sound, but I could be wrong. It's middle, sound effects at the top. Yeah, you have the boop beep.
You click on any of those, you hear how they sound.
But it might change my beep.
Well, yes, so you should change it back to boop when you're done.
Oh wow.
Right. I mean, I sometimes think it would be nice if you had a different sound, just because like I'll often have like either emit sound of sound note or speak or beep or something like that, so that I can do other things and have it let me know when it's done. The only problem with the default beep is that default beep is exactly what I want, except that it means so many other things on my computer.
I know. And you're always looking around what just beeped.
Right.
I have a little utility I use all the time that it's like Echo, but instead of printing, it either does like a ding or it says failed. If something comes back as a failure, but then it like Echo, it returns, the same expression, and I find it pretty useful for running the background stuff.
Okay, so what do we do here? I mean, we've got beep with a one argument form, which has this kind of annoying populating the why the beep message, which I'm not sure. I mean, we could hack it and have certain alert sounds. I mean, look, the first thing is to curate some beeps. And I don't know, this is not a common thing that comes up in the company. So we don't have, sound design particularly as a thing. We could try asking graphic design whether they have a thought about this, whether they know somebody, I mean, I think somebody could ask Andre, he's been into such things in the past, but maybe we can just find a person who's into doing this. Does that seem reasonable?
I think the two most important is like a success and failure. So
Okay.
that would be really useful.
Well, then we may need another name than beep if we've already burnt up its one argument form.
So by the way, what does ding do? Does ding make some reasonable sound?
Yeah. It's like a higher pitched one. Like it's.
I mean, but
you know,
is it like
sounds
emit
good.
sound of sound note or something, or is it some more
I
designed
think so. Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's simple. It's
What
not.
was that? I'm
It's
sorry.
not
What is
designed.
ding? What are you talking about? Where is ding?
function?
There's a resource function ding.
Okay. Well, I mean, so we may be able to have a name like ding.
Yeah.
So we can have beep and ding.
That does seem a little bit weird, but I think first of all, let's get these things designed. I see Avery is commenting that Bob from video works on music audio. I bet there are a bunch of people in the company. I bet we can look up the who knows what database and find a bunch, but we can certainly start there. Maybe Avery could go try and chase this and see whether we can find somebody who is into doing this.
Okay.
And I agree that the things that we need are, we could have something that's called a success beep, if it's called beeps, or success ding, failure beep. And I'm sure we can get, an upbeat beep and a downbeat beep, and a what other kinds of beeps are there that are sort of obviously I mean, I could imagine a situation like echo where actually this is a cool idea. Something like this, where you say it won't work with beep as that name, but let's say echo beep or something like that. Let's call it that, where an expa, there is a beep deduced from the form of expa that is generated.
So,
As
so if
opposed-
expert is dollar, I mean,
Yeah,
hopefully it's not too intelligent. If expert is dollar failed, it'll go beep beep.
Exactly.
And if
That's
it's anything
exactly
else,
what I
it'll-
have. That's exactly what I have. Yeah.
Right. So then this is a wrapper like echo, and possibly, echo beep could both echo and beep.
Does this return expert?
I think using
that's what I'm saying.
the term echo for audio is troublesome because
Yeah.
echo.
Problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It has to beep twice.
Right.
Right.
Softer the second time.
Right. So so that's not a good name, but I think this idea of a wrapper, a beep wrapper, does seem useful to me, because that way, if that's the case, we can then, if what we put in it, because right now beep itself returns null probably, because it was built a long, long time ago, right? I'm sure it just returns null. Yeah. Like print. I mean, they're both wrong in some sense. And the correct thing would be to have it be a wrapper. And then the only question is whether it beeps and echoes. No, not of the beep, but I mean and print, you know what I'm saying.
If it also prints, then echo beep might not be a bad name.
Well, but the printing is, I feel like there are cases where you don't want it to print, and then
Yeah.
there are also, it's so easy just to say echo of beep. Of
Yeah, I agree.
whatever.
Fair point.
But-
Fair point. So if we have I mean, clearly we could could we reuse beep? I don't know.
Doesn't really sound like it.
Maybe as an optional first argument.
No. The first argument to beep is a message, but the question is, this is populating the why the beep dialogue, as opposed to, I mean, I don't think it would be terrible to have beep start returning its argument as opposed to being null. I'm not sure. That might break things. I don't know. I mean, it's just such a nice name. Beep is such a nice name. What other things are there like beep that are
Chime.
that sounds too bell-like? Let me see. Am I convenient?
Emit sound.
We got emit sound is already a function.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Well, unfortunately, ding has too many other meanings.
By the way, emit sound doesn't have a zero arg form. So
Yeah, but we're not looking for zero argument. We're looking for one argument.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that the emit sound of zero args maybe should beep.
Maybe.
Like beep alert.
Yeah, it just seems very, like we used up the good name.
Yep.
On something that doesn't.
Well, we
and
did.
I'm still not convinced. Wait, what's that?
We did.
Well, perhaps so. In version, oh my God, it's actually fairly recent. I mean, it's not older than anybody here, for example.
What was updated 13.1? Did the message get added 13.1?
Yeah, the string argument was added, I think.
Oh, okay.
Well,
so we just dug ourselves into a hole then.
You know what? We could reverse that. I think we should reverse that. I think it was a mistake. That's not that big a deal. If we just added it, it's not got a bunch of burnt-in code based on that. It's not devastating.
But it would still return null.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Why?
Oh, just because that I assume goes back to version 6 or whatever.
But I can't believe
beep
anybody
open close could return null, because what else could it return other than like sequence open close? But beep of X could still return X.
You're right.
I see. Yep.
I think this is what we should do. I think beep of expr should return a beep that is suitable for expr and should return expr. And in terms of putting something into the message window, we need a good mechanism for, we need this notify function that, puts up a notifier on the screen. Because that's the thing, you're running, this is a typical thing. You're running off screen. It's this, that, and the other. You want one of these notifiers that's an operating system notifier or notification or whatever to come up. And that's kind of like our out of window print type thing. You know what I'm saying? Could somebody investigate how we do that? I don't know whether it involves the front end team or whether it's just, where it really comes from, right? You know what I'm saying? We want something where you can.
There's something in the repository for that. I just linked it in chat.
Oh. Oh, wow. Wow, you wrote this already?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Well, I've been wanting this for just millions of years.
We have a manipulate version of Rick that just outputs functions like this by the bushel.
Except that this particular bushel seems to have choked on its coffee.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it broke in 13.2.
Actually, yeah, I was gonna say, depending on what build this is, I heard Todd mention in a meeting earlier that there were, various flags for JLink that need to be updated.
Well, listen, I think we need this function as a system function.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly check in with John if there's anything related to the front end system there too, but it does seem like there's
right. But if Rick has already solved the problem, now
this uses an external service, Rick, or just it's making some system call.
Yeah, I'm just using some Java library. I don't remember the details off the top of my head. It's a while ago.
Yeah, we can look at how
let's
it's done
do a
and
proper
evaluate
design
it
review
later.
of this. This is very useful. And by the way, it should also work in the cloud and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just completely separate code.
Okay, yeah, we'll put that on the docket and do a quick sweep.
Fine. And then I think we should plan on using beep of expr. We should get some sound design. What kinds of things do we want? We want a success beep, a failure beep.
Warning beep.
Yeah, probably. Low memory beep. That make any sense or something? Or how will we even know that? What would we return? What thing when you feed it in? Is there a way of taking a random expression and, beeping about it. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, in other words, what's the difference between beep of range of 10 and beep of range of 1,000? And I would argue if we could get a nice thing that has, if it's 10, it's, it's kind of like, well, what will be an audio version of this? I mean, we could do kind of a sound. I mean, maybe this is crazy. I mean, we could imagine something where we take an expression and we try and iconize, we try and make a sound icon of that expression. Does that make any sense to anybody?
I think that sounds fraught.
It's a discussion we had maybe with Tali like 11 years ago about, having sonification of things. Like, I think at some point we also discussed making sounds out of plots and things like that, which is actually a super nice idea, because sometimes you can hear things that, like,
yes, been there before. In version 2, we introduced the function play, analogous to plot. It's never been a huge win.
Well, but play is a little different. But I think there were various summer school projects also like a decade ago that related to this. But yeah. Actually, there was one even pretty recently. I think Show is his name, had a project about this.
Well,
but I think really, I mean, it's like you added this to your code and you're distracted by other things, and then you hear some weird sound, and it's like I think it's much better if you just have like 2, like positive, negative, something like that.
Fair enough. It's like the sentiment of an expression.
You could add a second argument like enclose, where it applies a function to whatever it is, but by default, I think simple is better.
Right. So basically, it's the sentiment of an expression, up or down type thing, success or failure.
That's what I'd want.
Fair enough.
And I think for future, something like compute with progress could incorporate some kind of a beeping system, because that seems to be the most common use case that people are using beeps for.
Okay, the other thing I can imagine is, if I want beep of I got a null list versus I got a bunch of things out. I mean, I don't know. I can imagine, it's kind of like, burp, I didn't get anything. Or, bop, I got a bunch of cool stuff here. Am I making sense? I mean, that seems like it might be worth distinguishing. Nobody's very convinced.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of what are the useful things to get audio-wise. What I would think is either if there's some, the generic fallback is either size of expression, we've got a bunch of data here, or perhaps something that is indicative of how long it took. But I don't know that either of those are universally useful.
Okay, Ethan on our live stream is suggesting a warning sound for us. Let's try it. Very dangerous. That's kind of fun. Did you hear that?
I think you need to share the audio. You need to share the audio through Zoom.
I could hear it.
It wasn't.
I could hear it like very faintly.
Well, let's. How do we audio amplify? Shadi, how do I make it louder?
Just times something. The play times a number, or no, this is a sound. So that might work.
I think we're only hearing it like out your speakers in your microphone kind of thing.
No, it's very quiet here.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Audio settings. How do I do this? Well, anyway, you can try it on your own machine. It's kind of cool. It's fun. Okay. Okay. Well, So I think what we're learning here, I mean, we probably need to bring this back after somebody's thought about it. But, I can imagine true, false, 0, 1, things like that. I mean, I can imagine a null list being different from something else, those kinds of things. I mean, this needs a little bit of sound design, because if there is a core kind of beep sound, and then there's a little tail to it somehow that is different depending on these different cases, then you will not be confused about what kind of what animal produced that beep. But nevertheless, you will have some hint from the tail of the beep, so to speak, what was being communicated there. Anyway, I really like having notify. I really like this. This is a good idea to have beep be another thing like echo. Really useful idea. But I do think its default beep needs to be something other than the generic system beep, where you're just confused about where it came from. So, okay, Avery, if you can take that and try and feed that to appropriate people.
Yep. We also do have Carlo here, so if we want to look at the first handful of items at some point, we can do that too.
Well, this is what he gets for being late, is we're going to do Shoddy's stuff first.
In my defense, I never got the new time for this movie.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
Yeah.
Then,
it's also 9 p.m. for me, so.
Okay. Let's try and go through these quickly. Auto-tune. What is that again? Shoddy?
I again don't recall where this has come from. It's similar to pitch shifting, time stretching. These are effects that we're talking about, not low hanging in my opinion.
And also not that important in my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, okay. Image anonymize. That's been a thing we've been wanting to get done as a summer school student project and so on. I don't know, is that important? I don't think most of our use cases, people care about that particularly, but it would be I also a little bit worried about what we sign up for in doing it, so to speak.
Yeah, having a full coverage on anonymization is probably debatable forever.
Yeah, right. I think we should punt on this one too. Okay, photo enhance.
Could be low hanging for some things. It really depends on what kind of enhancements we're talking about.
Look, red eye removal is a thing of the past.
Yep.
I mean, it's relevant for legacy photos, but it's not relevant for anything new. I realized I haven't seen a phone flash to take a picture in millions of years. Anyway, that's what you get for high dynamic range CCDs or whatever they are. I think there's nothing. I don't think this is a thing either. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think we have one lower hanging function, not low hanging, but not as high priority project on our list for face transforms, maybe based on a lot of neural networks for younger, older, and so forth. I think something like red eye removal could be.
Yeah, well, that's a good WFR. Look, red eye removal is rather easy, and having a WFR for red eye removal would seem useful to me.
Yeah, sure, I agree.
What about something for levels, like that takes the histogram to something more reasonable in case?
I thought we already had that. We already have a bunch of.
Probably we do.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's a standard image processing thing. All right, time scripting.
I couldn't remember what was the topic. I don't know what that means.
Okay, here's what this is, and this is actually a good idea and important, and it dovetails with a bunch of other complicated stuff about time series, and really this is a thing. Okay, this really should, insofar as we've got a time series redesign going on, this should be looked at. Okay, so what is this? This means, and it's also relevant to video. This is, okay, when you do a video, when you do like a animation video, for example, okay? Let's say, and I think we have some somewhat hacky syntax for this right now. If you say, I want to show this for 1 second, followed by this for 3 seconds, followed by whatever else. See what I'm saying? How do you do that right now in video?
Multiple videos, we have to trim and then join them.
No, and what I'm saying is this: when we have animation video, okay, we are taking, there we've got a function that we're doing this to, right?
Yes.
But we also have a slideshow video. That's images. Oh, here we go.
And we have the
DT1,
DTs, yeah.
DT2. Okay, we don't yet have a transition mechanism, right?
No. That's on the list, though. The transitions fix, well, no, any transition. We haven't designed that, but we do want to add transitions for slideshows, joining, and other functions.
Okay, but look, what this is, and this is probably a separate discussion, separate meeting, this is something where the idea would be, just like we have geometry, roughly, it's kind of like a graphics, where you're saying with insets or something, where you say, put these things at these places on the screen. Okay, this goes along with a thing I've long thought we should have, but now that we have video, this actually becomes more interesting. Okay, is timed plot, which you might argue is just like animate, I suppose. What am I saying? So if I say animate, well, okay, so if I say animate plot sine x plus t x0 10 comma t 0 5. Yeah, I guess that's basically the best we can do for a timed plot. And now if I say for that, if I say animation video, God, this is so painfully slow. And why did it just freeze that other thing?
I don't know, maybe the progress monitor was coming up.
Are we embarrassed at how slow this is?
A lot of it comes from rasterize. We have had discussions again, or we are restarting discussions again with the front-end team about speeding up rasterize.
I mean, I don't understand how this can be so slow, because the fact is, this is generating, obviously, the operating system is generating a raster at a high speed here.
Yep. Yeah, that's something Yuju was bringing up, the fact that perhaps we don't need to rasterize anything anymore because we're displaying rasters already.
Yes, well, quite. And I mean, look at this. It's got all kinds of cruft in it. I don't know why it came out bigger, and I don't know why the frame is wiggling. I think you should look at this. I think this has got bugs in it.
The frame is weird. The fact that it's bigger is because you're on a high resolution screen. Rasterize is giving you the pixel dimensions, rightly so, is twice as big as what you see in that graphics above. And video doesn't have anything. We cannot store anything like resolution in videos like we can for images. So it just gets displayed twice as big.
Why can't we put in the video wrapper, why can't we put resolution information?
In the video wrapper, we can probably do something, but none of the video formats support something like that. Image formats do. And we do save them correctly.
So there's no EXIF or whatever for video in all those hundreds of video formats. Okay, look. I think more needs to be looked at here, and I do think this thing about rasterization needs to be solved, because I think this particular case of animation video we should be able to do unbelievably much faster.
I agree.
Right. And why don't you look at this particular case? I'll send it to you.
I have it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So in terms of this, I think it's a separate meeting to discuss symbolic timing wrappers. And I don't know, maybe Jose has an opinion about this, because it also relates, and there are multiple things from temporal logic to time series, to sound, to video, to even things about historical countries and things. Go ahead.
I do see the connection with temporal logic with constructions such as until, so that we have two things proceeding. We could have, I don't know, several images appearing at the same time, and then one disappears, another takes over, like that.
Right.
But I don't see the general context here yet.
I understand. I think we need a separate meeting about this. This can be another ILD topic. And let's bring this back with, again, people from the time series team, etc., need to be part of that. Make sense, Avery? But in terms of this right now, we've just got some bug stories to, resolve here.
Yep.
Okay, Markdown was a priority project in 2015. Eye roll.
We talked about it in the import-export meeting. We're gonna get to it at some point. We're thinking we can handle it. Maybe the front-end team, not maybe, the front-end team should be involved when we're talking about whole notebook import, whole notebook export. A lot of things before that could be done just within the import-export team.
Needless to say, is this another Rick production?
Yeah, it was just an early prototype of something I wanted to flesh out at some point.
But by the way, for some reason, this page has been misbuilt. Look at that. After scope, it just dies. Something is wrong with this actual page.
Yeah. Well, it's not in the public repository.
Oh, it's not.
This is a cloud deployed function.
Yeah, I haven't actually submitted that to the repository yet. I was going to work on it at some point.
Cool. Well, Shadi, there's a connection for you.
There's some stuff in the repository specific to like a table, I think, but not sort of a general thing.
I think that would be nice to have. By the way, I don't even know, how would you generate an HTML table? Is there an easy way to do that? If I want to, take something from our table system, our grid system,
yeah, HTML fragment in export on a grid.
Just does it.
Just does it, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Connor has a thing for Markdown to notebook. Huh. Well, that seems relevant. So
I think he's also been working on a notebook to Markdown kind of thing as well.
Okay, so then fine. So there's another connection for Shadi here.
Sounds good.
I mean, Connor is dealing with that because he's dealing with Packlet tools and the interaction with Git and GitHub and so on. Okay, let us return to Colo here. Okay. This seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So therefore, we don't need to spend our brains on it. Export string with HTTP.
First time I hear of this.
The heck is this? Oh, I see. It's for generating, I'm a little confused here, but an HTTP response, I see the point. You've got an HTTP response. And the question is, I mean, I don't even know how this works, but what does the, when your computer contacts a web, or when you get back something from a web server, the raw stream of bits is an ASCII string. Is that a true statement?
No, it depends. It depends on the MIME type. So, it could return something that is actually bytes. And it has an encoding in general in the MIME type. So, it can be,
but the question here is, what this is asking is there a string equivalent, or maybe it's a byte array equivalent of HTTP response? Because right now,
yeah, there is. It's if the string equivalent is body, it's property of HTTP response, and the byte equivalent is body bytes.
But is that the whole thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Except, I mean, one thing that you might want, but it's pretty much what URL execute does, is to read also the MIME type and import it as appropriate.
Well, I assume that that's what import does. If it's sent to an arbitrary URL, that it uses the MIME type to decide what to import it as, doesn't it?
Yeah, but import cannot do a proper full request. So that's why we have
Why?
URL. Because if you are, it doesn't support method, doesn't support, you can put query parameters, but you cannot do a post request with, with proper encoding of the.
But it can do authentication, for example.
Yes.
Import
So is
also
there an
works on
authentication?
HTTP response object directly, just like URL execute would have, and uses the MIME type and everything, right?
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah, you can do URL read and then import.
Okay, so look, what I'm talking about here is for some combination of debugging and educational purposes to actually see the raw bytes that are going to be sent in an HTTP response. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but open the documentation page for URL HTTP response, and there's a way to get a string out, and there's a way to get. And if you want something that is more sugary than that, we can put it in.
I'm suggesting that maybe
body bytes and body byte array.
Okay, but I'm just suggesting maybe that export string works on HTTP response.
Why export string? If anything, import string.
Well, I'm sorry, I meant export string would work on HTTP. No, given a response specification, you want to know what is the string version of that response specification, which you could get by using the body property of HTTP response. I'm just suggesting an alternative way to get that. Maybe it's just totally confusing. Does that make any sense? Look, if I go to, import, for example, then I've got a list of formats, and, I can imagine somewhere here by the time we've got work formats and things like this, maybe this makes no sense. Okay, just tell me, does this make any sense or not? Being able to get a raw, HTTP response as a string from a symbolic HTTP response object using import. Does that make any sense, or is it a waste of time?
I think it's confusing.
Okay, fine. Okay, anybody want to save this, or do we kill it?
Not me.
I'm fine killing it.
Okay, phone number.
Okay, phone number. The story here is that we've wanted to have something like a phone number head with properties for a while.
Yes.
And I've started implementing it, and there are a few things extra that we can get out of the library we're using.
Okay.
Not super duper interesting. And I mean, we can do that. It's very easy. The question is whether we, what do we do in terms of interpreter? Like, should we have an interpreter type that returns this object?
Yes.
And I'm guessing you don't want to break backwards compatibility to get that, right?
Why would we need to break backwards compatibility?
Because interpreter phone number returns a string.
What kind of string does it return?
So so if you put there you have examples that don't work. But for example, if you do interpreter phone number of 217 without the +1 and without the extension, then you get the full thing with the country code, etc. And it uses like your geo IP to figure out where you are. Yeah, that's what it does.
Okay, I've got a different question here. If I want to put a mail to, or a phone number for that matter, hyperlink in a notebook, how does that work? How do I do that?
With hyperlink, Command-Shift-H.
I see. But it doesn't it can't possibly auto But wait a minute. So if I say send to, and then I say me, and then I put in a hyperlink here, and then I put in, so if I now put in an email address, here.
I think it has to be a mail to colon.
Okay. Well, this needs then better documentation. I mean, it needs to, this hyperlink thing then would need to, well, that worked. Okay, but I would never have known that that would work. So somehow in the hyperlink dialog, maybe this is how every maybe it's how every hyperlink dialog in every application works. I don't know. But that's how you put in a mail to. But
We
somehow
also have it documented in hyperlink, but it's quite invisible.
Yeah, it's just a note in hyperlink.
Yeah.
I mean, I could certainly see the dialogue having a checkbox to say this is an email
why
address.
Is it? Why not put it as an email address as a tab up here that's for email?
I'm not sure how commonly wanted that is to make it a tab.
I don't know, but somehow, or maybe it's under advanced.
Just a checkbox.
I think that the mail to thing supports also having like title and body. So maybe it makes sense to have it as another tab so that you can fill out these other things.
That would seem useful to me. And that would also have a phone number. I don't even know what does it look like under the hood when you have a link to a phone number that causes a phone to, be able to call that number. There's an analog of mail to for phones, right?
I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a phone colon. I don't know if that's actually
it might be
a standard or.
Yeah.
Well, let's find out. Let's find out. And if it is, then, in the hyperlink dialog, we could add some kind of way of having extra tabs that for these different things. That seems like the right place to put it in. Now, in terms of a phone number head, I mean, we don't even have a mail address head.
Yeah,
Well,
but I don't
suppose that-
like with the phone number. It has the advantage that there are a couple of metadata we can get out of the library we're using, and that get lost after we're done parsing it with interpreter. So things like the prefix, the country code.
So
in some cases we can detect whether it's a mobile line or landline.
Avery is commenting that it's TEL : is the telephone thing. So can we find out what the other codes like that are? Maybe there's one where somebody's added where you call people in the metaverse or something. Who knows? I don't think so yet. Or
SMS seems to be another one of those tags.
Okay. So those seem worthwhile to somehow indicate, since most of us don't even seem to know you can do it. It seems like a worthwhile thing to have as a tab but this is the wrong group to talk about that. That should go to the user assistance meeting.
Yep, we'll pass
Got
that
it.
along. Okay.
Now, in terms of phone number head, we've agreed for years that we should have such a thing. Which is also relevant to send message, because that will allow one to, I mean, I don't know, this doesn't strike me as super high priority, but it sounds like it's a desirable thing. And I'm not sure that Carlo is necessarily the best equipped person. Oh, that's cool. Being able to do this kind of thing.
I already.
You already did it.
Kind of. I mean, it's not finished. It needs some. It will need design review with you. It will need an icon and a box, I guess.
Okay, fine. Well, okay. So Avery, can you deal with this? And maybe Nick, you could pick this up. I mean,
yeah.
Sounds like it's a almost done thing. All right. I think that was everything for Carlo.
Yep.
Does Carlo want to raise anything else? Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm fine. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. See ya. Okay. Longer term ILD. All right.
Do I need to stick around for the rest of it?
We should be done with you, Shadi.
Maybe.
We can let Stephen do a quick
Yes.
scan.
I think yes. Thank you, Shadi.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Linguistics for data set. I mean, that's just a project we really need to push. And I think we've tried to do some prototypes at summer schools and things like that. But I mean, doesn't really understand what this is about. This is about, I want to select this column of this data set, blah, 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 and I want to write that in natural language. And I can see that Wolfram Alpha Notebook Edition could benefit from some stuff like this. Everybody here is silent because nobody here is really relevant to this project. I think. Anybody got anything to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if this was more related to data set, in which case Jose may have an opinion, or if it was more related to NLP.
It's more related to NLP. Well, it's a combination. I mean, it's basically given a data set about which you can say things. How do you express those things in plain language? Now, in fact, Carlo, who just departed, built a bunch of this technology for the data upload options of Wolfram Alpha Pro. This is a useful thing, and I mean, it's going to need a separate. Well, you should put it on an ILD agenda.
Okay.
With Carlo part of that, Jeremy Michelson part of that. Okay.
Yep.
I can imagine there might be a predictive interface angle to this as well, to suggest things to do with a data set.
Yes, that would be a good idea as well. But I mean, the most important thing is it's just really difficult to, okay, so a very basic thing is, given that there are names for columns in a data set, be able to refer to things. I mean, it's things like, select all fishes longer than 5 centimeters. Okay, and the data set has, well, I admit that it might not know that it's a data set of fishes, but it might have a length column. You get what I'm saying?
Yes. And where would we put this? I mean, in Wayne, there is a natural place to put it, but in a standard notebook?
I think it would be something like
have to fit into query somehow, right?
Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, I don't know. I'm making this up, an interpreted query or something. I mean, and in practice, what might happen is you might have your data set, and then you might say, for that data set, I haven't thought about this. I mean, it's some control equals thing around the data set. I don't know. I mean, you select the data set and you press control equals or something, or you have a tab in the data set that gives you a field that allows you to type in natural language. That seems like a possible thing. In other words, you have the data set. Where's a good data set for us? What kind of data set? Is Titanic or something here?
Yes, or planets. Yeah.
Okay, so I could imagine something where there's some, on hover or something else, there's some little tab here or possibly there's a ribbon down at the bottom. I mean, that would be a nice thing to do. That would be a very nice thing to do. Just like in, images, we have this ribbon that comes up that what am I doing? Random image is what I wanted to say. Okay, that we have this ribbon that allows you to do things. I could imagine the same thing with dataset. I mean, that might be useful in its own right, and maybe we should think about that. Jose, comments?
Yes, that's a possibility. I was thinking of clicking perhaps on the empty square.
Yeah, that's also possible. Right, but I mean, any of these things, there's probably a nice UX for entering a query.
Mm-hmm.
And then the actual symbolic form of it, I don't know whether it's this or something different, but something like that. Noticing this comment here. Okay. Huh. All right. It's interesting. All right. Let's keep going here. All right, so I think that's what we should be discussing here. And I think we should, this might be easier than the natural language thing. We might be able to have a bunch of features. I mean, I thought we were adding this stuff. Is it not in, this is 13.2. I thought we were adding all these things to sort columns and things in data sets. What happened to that?
It's there. You can right click on the name of the column. No, the name of the column and right click.
I actually didn't know that. That was, well, who knew? People are going to run out of space on Mars before they know it. They have to go terraform Venus or something. Never mind.
Can I ask how it determines whether the column is sortable? Because I noticed, like, if you click on some of the rows in this data set, that you don't get the sort menu.
Okay, well, let's take a look. I mean, how do we sort this column here, for example? We can't.
Yeah, right. So those are headers.
Boy, we need better UX here, because I really wouldn't have known that there was that, I mean, I think we should think about a ribbon or something, because even knowing this right click thing, I completely forgot the right click thing existed. I mean, that's a really nice feature there, but I forgot it existed. And I don't quite understand why we don't, on hover here, show some kind of menu, because, who's hovering over a data set? See what I'm saying?
Yes, I don't know all the details of this, but there are different things you can do, like clicking and going into a sub data set and things like that. So that's why we have to be careful with the various behaviors here.
Right.
So well, you can click on radius and you see a sub data set.
Yes, I understand. I think this requires more discussion. Separate meeting, perhaps even a custom meeting about dataset future, about UX, and about the natural language stuff.
Mm-hmm. We should have somebody from the front end to discuss those things.
Yes, right. And somebody from UX and so on. So, okay, another thing for you, Avery, to deal with. Okay. This really is the elegant code formatting project, which I'm fairly disappointed hasn't happened yet. Does anybody know the status of that?
I'm involved in that. I mean, it's on John's plate right now, working with the fonts.
Oh boy. I wish there was somebody else who could deal with that. All right, this particular project, I don't think makes any sense. I don't know if Christopher would like to comment on this. You know, like you see pseudocode written in books, right? And the question is there a way in which we can take our code and format it as pseudocode, just like we format, you know, math expressions in traditional textbook form?
Right. I would say maybe okay. The first thing is I think that formatting our code automatically as pseudocode, I don't think will really work, both because of the styles of pseudocode. I mean, like, for example, in math, right, you know, there's a certain style in which you're sort of, not just visually, but just semantically, in which you're supposed to express things. And almost always pseudocode is expressed in this extremely procedural style that is just not how, you know, people normally write, you know, Mathematica. And for example, I don't think I've ever really seen like Lisp pseudocode or something. People usually just translate it into some very procedural thing. The thing that might be useful though would be we have this like cell type called program, which I actually use quite a bit, which sort of, you know, just makes some sort of monospace font with these bars over it. That's sort of how you write, you know, code that might be in an external language. But it might be nice to have something like that sort of lets you write pseudocode, you know, with all the different bold and italic and backward arrows and weird stuff like that people like to do. But I don't imagine it would be an automatic thing.
What is it? Program or external language?
Program. External language is for external evaluate.
So is this evaluable? No.
But that's usually, like, if you want to embed C code, or if you want to say something like, oh, now run this command in the command line, you know, that's how you would format it.
I see. So one of the questions is, in pseudocode, it's, I don't even know, maybe pseudocode is going the way of the dodo. I don't know. I mean, you might also be right that pseudocode was written and was invented because people would otherwise be writing assembly code, and that wasn't a way to communicate anything. And so they invented pseudocode as essentially a high-level language for assembly language or something. Anybody got a sense of that? I mean, is it?
I mean, I would say usually, I'd say kind of, like, usually pseudocode, like, you should just look up some examples of pseudocode maybe if you want to see them, but often it's, you know, they don't use any real syntax or anything, and they'll sort of, you know, they'll use for loops and stuff like that. But then the reason why it's pseudocode and not code is that in the middle, you know, there'll be some function that, you know, does magical things or something, where they're glossing over all the error handling and they're, you know, stuff like that.
Well, I suppose, okay, so this is an example.
That's a pretty simple one though. There's nothing, you know, if you look at like real papers, almost always there'll be a section where they'll say, you know, if, you know,
calculate expected PSNR.
Right, there you go.
Well, that raises the question of whether we should have just a function called pseudocode that people can write. This is where the action really happens. Now, the question is, let's say that was in the middle, because we have a symbolic language. So this, you know, that thing could just sit as pseudocode. This is where the action really happens. I mean, arguably, okay, what this is a function, a sort of a combination between a comment and a function. So, for example, you could imagine this of x of y, and then when you look at this, and it could format nicely, and then when you look at this code, it's got that in there until you decide to edit it and turn it into something real. In other words, if you want to send somebody a piece of Wolfram language pseudocode, this might be quite a useful thing, because otherwise you'll have a syntactically incorrect thing with a comment sitting there, and the comment will go away on evaluation, all kinds of crazy things.
Could iconize be used for this?
It certainly could be related. I don't think it's quite the same thing, but
code and use that as the label.
Well, I understand, but if there's actual code there, absolutely. But this is the case where there isn't any code there, and where the semantics. Actually, this is not a bad idea. This isn't yet fully cooked, but this is not a bad idea. I mean, in other words, people get the point of this. The point of this is that you're writing a piece of code, and it says, table, or I don't know what it says. It says, this is applied to, I don't know, linear solve of blah, blah, blah. And this thing here has a determinant of this and blah, blah, blah. And then this is now a piece of code that the question is, what would it actually do? And what it should do is, everything outside of this should be somehow frozen, inactivated. See what I'm saying?
How is this related to natural language? The same thing we were discussing for dataset before?
Well, I think this is really just a comment. This is not really saying, this is saying only vaguely what it does. This is too vague to be interpreted.
I think it should issue a warning every time it evaluates.
That's a good point. But what about it just not evaluating? What about if you put this in your code, then this stuff can evaluate here, but the things outside of the pseudocode just won't evaluate? Do we have a way to do that? To freeze from the inside, so to speak? We have hold that freezes from the outside.
Yeah, you can do insane things with up values, but first of all, hold complete will stop it, and also I think it's a little bit sketchy. I think it would be better if it if you had some outer wrapper as well. If nothing else, imagine this sort of weird security problems and stuff you'd have. You had something that held from the inside.
I see what you're saying. That it has to go all the way to somewhere. So
right.
I see. So
just imagine the bizarre bugs if you feed one of these, an API function, and it starts, eating up the cloud in some bizarre way.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, okay. So then you'd have an outer pseudocode wrapper, and then inside you would have a
placeholder code or something like that.
Yeah, or a pseudo or something.
Maybe, this is a little bit different, but it seems like one of the main uses for having kind of real code real code that's integrated with pseudocode would be you're writing some code and you're sort of doing it bit by bit, and you haven't finished this part yet.
Exactly.
Right. But yeah, maybe it'd be worth also having some subsequent arguments that let you kind of spoof the value or something.
That's an interesting idea. Right. So in other words, it's a comment. That's a good idea. Where the default value.
Again, but like you say, it might just be a comment. Like maybe you can just write the spoof value and then a comment
but the
after
whole
it.
Point about I never like using comments because they go away when you reformat the code and so on. If you do Command-Shift-N, your comments are gone. Now, when we have these new syntax trees, maybe that won't happen. But this isn't a bad thing to do. Honestly, I could imagine this being useful in general of a way to comment your code in a symbolic comment that's actually there. It reminds me of some of these if compiled wrappers or the type hint wrappers that just go away on evaluation. I like this idea. This is not fully cooked, but I like the idea of a pseudocode wrapper. Now, maybe what happens is this freezing from the inside thing, I admit, is a little bit crazy. And, for some purposes, it's perfectly okay to have, something like, something here where we say, the big function, and then we say map that over ABC. Big deal. So it looks like that. And if it's nicely formatted, that's not going to be, horrifying to see that. You just know that there's a piece you didn't fill in. I mean, it's really, look, clearly you can have conventions that will achieve the exact same thing. But it seems useful to me. Comments from people here. Nick, I think this is for you to try and...
Nick had to step out for a second, but I can pass it along to him.
Okay. Okay. Any further comments on this topic? I think the original traditional form for code thing, the only question that I would have there is the font characters for, gets a value and things like this, which could be alternative syntax for assignment and so on. Am I making sense? Christopher, you know what I'm talking about?
I guess so.
I mean, like the algol assignment operator.
I don't know what that is.
It's a left arrow.
Oh, yeah.
Right, it's what people use in pseudocode to represent assignment often. Yeah, here. I mean,
Yes.
I'm going to pull up a random example of pseudocode.
No, I know. I didn't know that was from algol.
I think it's from algol.
I think
But
APL uses it too.
That sounds plausible. They're from sort of the same time. I mean, it raises the question, okay? I have to say, it does raise the question of whether, if we introduced font characters or something like that, that represented, an if, a then, an else, that actually could be written in this kind of syntax. You see what I'm saying? That's a separate point. I mean, there's two different points here.
I mean, you just mean we have a whole version of the language where you write things with if and then, and it's all lowercase and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, what we can imagine is, let's imagine that we said escape if escape, okay? And that turned into a thing that was a blob that looked like an if, and maybe had some decoration around it, right? So it's not, so it doesn't look like it's just a pure whatever. And it just has literally syntax. It's like an integral sign. It's like an integral sign has multiple buckets in it, right? The integrand and the limits and so on. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think this is so crazy. I mean, because I've not really thought about this before, but I mean, it would seem to me. What do other people think about this? Jose, what do you think?
I think I see two different ideas here. One is this idea of having an external thing that will format the internal code and will do nice things.
Which I think is fairly, which I think Christopher has commented is, well, the only thing that I could imagine is a traditional form of if that looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
That arrow assignment, by the way, seems to be APL.
Oh, really? Okay. I was wrong. What does algol use?
It's the equal or colon equal. I forget.
I'm wrong.
Which.
Okay. I'm wrong.
I think R uses the left arrow too for assignment.
What is which?
R.
Oh.
It has several assignment operators though, but that is one of them.
Well, in any case, okay, we got several different things going on here. One is a syntax character that does assignment using a backwards arrow. That seems straightforward, and I bet there's one in Unicode, and it's just a question of hooking it up. Item number one. Item number two, traditional formatting of if. Is there something sentient we can do there? Am I making sense? Because right now, if I do Control-Shift-T of this, I just get that. Right? Question is, should we get something like this? Seems to me not crazy to do that. I don't know. It seems like nobody's paying attention anymore. So maybe it's time for us to wrap up. Anybody here? Anybody want to comment on that?
I think it's a little exotic.
Is it useful?
I mean, I can't imagine using it.
Might be useful as part of something bigger. So I don't see how we would use these just for if.
Well, because if you look at these pieces of pseudocode that I'm looking at here, I mean, it's basically procedural programming stuff. Like here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could take procedural programs and format them in this kind of way. Because procedural programming programs do have a traditional form formatting. Functional programs do not particularly.
Right. So rather than changing traditional form of something, there could be a new form that does these to programs.
Right. For some reason, this is the crazy thing. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right. Look, I think there is some potential value in formatting in having a traditional form formatting of procedural programs. Not that we're particularly emphasizing procedural programs, but it would be pretty nice if you could have, I mean, both ways round. If you could use special characters basically to make keywords, because there aren't very many keywords. Am I making sense?
Yes. I was looking, for example, at C form of if ABC. And certainly we could do better. Of if.
Oh, sorry, of if ABC.
Yes.
Well, that's pathetic. That's just wrong. I mean, that, C form hasn't probably been touched in 30 years.
But this is a context in which something like what you have above would look nice.
Actually, isn't there like a C if or something like that?
I have no idea. But
once you're in the symbolic C world, I think there's a C if, and that's even
symbolic C is a different issue.
Oh.
This is just regular C form. I mean, if I say C form of x squared plus 1 over x or something, oh, that's really weird. I mean, so that has to have a macro definition in the C header file, because it's not wanting to use POW probably because of costs and so on. I do think that we should explore this possibility, which had not occurred to me before, of having an actual syntax that uses keywords. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
I expect that in another meeting, okay, of seeing what we can do. And, is there a consistent syntax with like 6 or 7 keywords that directly translate? I mean, they're just syntax for if and while and so on. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay, we've got several decent ideas here. I mean, this idea of the pseudocode thing that is a symbolic way of maintaining information that you can then, fill in a program seems useful. All right, let's very quickly look at these last two here, and then we're going to wrap. Getting labeled to work in graphics. We have the wrong people here to discuss that. But people understand what that means, yes?
Internally in a part of graphics rather than whole graphics?
Yes, I mean that we can say graphics of something like, labeled disk, hello, right? That does not work right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
What about do things like call out? Does call out work right now?
I don't think it does, but I think tooltip works.
Right.
Mysteriously. I think
you actually just try call out, because call out is newer, so it might be different, but
not in graphics yet.
No, I mean, these have not worked, and I think they should. Now, the issue is that graphics is a full layout, has been a layout specifier. It gives raw layout, but I think this is one of these distinctions that is understood only by implementers and not by users, because I don't know why a user would expect that this would work, and it doesn't, and I don't see why it doesn't. I mean, clearly graphics has things that are not micro-specified, if you understand what I'm saying. Right? There are things in graphics that this is, okay, Avery, this is something to take to Brett, and perhaps it's going to need John Foltz, but I want to get this in a separate meeting, and people need, and I don't want a big thing about, oh, no, we can't do that because graphics always only does the literal things you ask it to do. Look at axes, it doesn't work that way. Avery, makes sense to you?
Yeah, I can pass that along.
Okay, but I want it in some meeting. I don't want it to disappear.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we're going to be able to discuss this at all. We could take a quick look at this. Oh boy. That's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, this section here is the biggest one, this design chestnuts.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of important things here for another meeting. A few things here we have already done.
Okay. I'll review this.
Like the Packlet system, mutable data structures, I think we can consider done. I think. Labeling on maps, I would assume that's now done. Do we consider that done, Jose? If I put a labeled into geographics, does it work?
A label? What do you mean a label?
Labeled, labeled.
Oh, labeled? No, not labeled.
Why not?
I think I had never thought about it before this meeting.
Okay.
I've always used labeled to label the geographics as a whole.
No, but I'm saying if I say I want geographics.
So for example, I use a lot labeled of a map.
No, but look, if we do this, if we say London,
this
is this going to work?
If it works, it's by completely a surprise to me.
Absolutely doesn't work.
Right. It just passed to graphics, and graphics will combine.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just wrong. Right? And so I don't even understand why this didn't pink here. Why it had an indirect.
It pinks in the background. It's just that we are placing the image on top of the background.
I see. So it sends that to the messages.
Right. So if you do geo background goes to none, you would see the pinking.
Okay, fine. Well, I just think this should work. I mean, I think it should work in graphics. I think it should work here.
Right. If it works in graphics, geographics will inherit it immediately. We can do something in geographics.
Non-trivial things.
Well, I guess the question is about position, where to put the label, but.
Well, right. That's the whole point. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why there's going to be all kinds of, I've heard it before. It's like, oh, we can't do that because graphics specifies things precisely. Well, look at axes. It doesn't specify things precisely. It's figuring out where to put the labels. with its heuristics or whatever in axes, so it can do the same thing for labeled.
Yeah, I believe it can be done.
Right.
It doesn't. Again, I've used labeled of geographics a lot, but never inside.
Right, I understand. But I mean, okay. All right. Well, we got lots of stuff to discuss for another time. Lots of interesting things, some of which we've talked about a lot of. Oh, look, tree manipulation. Look at that. Well, Ian had to go, but we could take that off the list.
No, I'm back, and we have not gotten XSLT type functionality yet, so that I don't know if it needs to be brought to an ILD meeting immediately, but
right, we know we're doing this.
We can track that.
Improved number thorn, we've done a lot of stuff on that. That's an interesting thing. Ways to label elements in graphics. What do you know? Should use labeled. Well, that's the same thing. This is another one that's Wolfram Alpha has had this for a dozen years. Automatically generate reasonable ranges for plots. Well, okay.
I think user level version of Transmogrify is also related to XSLT.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there's interesting things here. I noticed things like revised number form has shown up twice on this list. Yeah, we've got a bunch of this stuff here. This is done. So, okay, lots of interesting things. It's a very useful list. So,
I'll get it cleaned up for next time.
Sounds good. Okay, thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.